Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. When it comes to Slappy and Night of the Living Dummy content, it either ends up always being the same thing for me. I think it's pretty overrated. It could end up being mid or okay or bad sometimes. And it ends up being to the point where I think that there's way too much Slappy content out there. We're oversaturated with Slappy content, and we could get sequels and content for other books instead of all those stories of Slappy just because he's popular. However, there are pieces of Slappy work that is quite good. In fact, some of it that's fantastic, amazing. Some of that is the Night of the Living Dummy 2 book. I love the Night of the Living Dummy 2 book. I think it's perfect as a Night of the Living Dummy story, perfect for Slappy. I love the character development and story involving the family, some of the drama, the tension, and I think it is so well written. One of my favorite Goosebumps stories, to be honest. And that one I made a review for. However, this episode that I'm talking about today for the TV show is absolutely fantastic as well. And it is probably the best TV show adaptation of a book in Goosebumps history. I'm going to make that bold claim, but I think it's quite justified with what we're talking about today, which is none other than the Night of the Living Dummy 3 episode from the OG TV show. That's right. Night of the Living Dummy 3. Now, I did upload a video on this channel quite a while ago, which was about how I thought that the Night of the Living Dummy 3 book is the most overrated Goosebumps book that I've seen amongst the community. And I still stand by that. The Night of the Living Dummy 3 book is a weaker version of Night of the Living Dummy 1, alright? It has a lot of the same tropes and pranks and fake outs. One of the big fake outs in the middle of the book is directly copied from Night of the Living Dummy 1, where something very similar happens. The pranks are lackluster, involving what's happening with the puppets, what's not happening with puppets. There's a lot of cringy dialogue with the main characters and the dad included. A lot of cringy scenes and interactions between them. And then it all leads up to this climax where there's only half a page dedicated to what the cover of the book shows you. And that ends quite quickly and quite lackluster. And then you get to a twist ending, which is good. I did enjoy the twist ending to the book. But when 95% of the book is just sort of blah, average, below average, it doesn't really lead much to a twist ending. So you kind of need the rest of the body to get to the head. Pause, okay? But the episode is fantastic. I think that the writers did a great job with the episode. It is great. I love the creative changes they made. I think that the episode has a lot more flair to it. It has a lot better of a story premise, a lot more stakes. It has better interactions with the main characters. I think it has a better dynamic between them. And I think that it's actually quite creepy at times, and I like the style and how it was made. So this is a great episode. And again, I think that it's the best episode adaptation of a book, because yes, Haunted Mask 2 does give this a run for its money, but the Haunted Mask 2 book is a good book. It's quite a good book. Is it a perfect book? No, I have some problems with it, but they're not tremendous problems. And again, I still think that it's a good book to quite good book that got turned into a fantastic episode. Haunted Mask 2 is a fantastic adaptation, and it made quite a bit of changes. This one made quite a bit of changes, but it turned a below average to average Goosebumps book and then made it into something that's great and memorable and iconic and all that stuff. So I think this is the best. And for those of you who may be wondering, maybe what is this episode about if you've not seen it or if you're not familiar with the Night of the Living Dummy 3 book, this episode is basically revolving around the idea of the main characters, Dan and Trina. Dan and Trina are these two kids, and their dad is a ventriloquist. He has an attic full of ventriloquist dummies that he either rescues or buys and kind of fixes up, and then uses them in charity events and different occasions, basically, for performing. And Trina, in the middle of a night, as the opening scene, hears this commotion and noises throughout the house, and she thinks somebody may be moving around, maybe there's a potential break-in, and she hears this picture frame break. She gets up out of bed, she walks out, and she realizes the noises are coming up from the attic. So she pulls it down, heads up to the attic, and there the attic is full of the different dummies that her father uses for ventriloquism acts. And she goes up to a chair and pulls off the white sheet from this one dummy, and that dummy is Rocky. Rocky is this mobster dress dummy that is the beloved ventriloquist dummy that her father uses. And Rocky starts talking. He starts animating, moving his eyes, moving his eyebrows, and he starts talking to her. And right away she thinks it's fishy. She kind of catches on. Her younger brother Dan comes up and suspects as well that this may be a practical joke, and then they realize soon enough that it is a practical joke. Their dad, in fact, is performing some ventriloquism and pulling a prank on him. And you find out that this is sort of the family dynamic with the parents, where the dad is kind of a practical jokester. He likes performing, likes doing comedy, so he's often messing with them. And then the mother comes up as well just to join in the fun and kind of taunt him a little bit, get some nice family banter. However, it gets cut short because they realize that their cousin Zane is going to be staying with them a little bit at the house. And Zane is this super scaredy cat kid. He's very easy to spook. He's kind of awkward, socially awkward, nerdy, kind of geeky, kind of weird. And he's an easy target to pick on. So Dan and Trina have always played jokes on him. They went too far with this one prank the last time he stayed, where they basically took his bed mattress while he was sleeping on it and put it out in this like farmland place where he woke up to a cow sniffing him, and he freaked out, screamed, and didn't want to come back. So the parents basically make a vow with the kids that, you cannot prank Zane while he's here because you've tormented him so much over the years. You've made it very uncomfortable for him to come by. Please stop it. Just let him enjoy himself. Have a good family time and don't interrupt it with practical jokes. And, they're kind of defensive. They're like, he deserves it. He earned it. Dad's a joker. We just get it from him. But then they eventually kind of conform and agree, you know what, we're not going to pull any pranks. We're going to have a good time. We're going to spend some time with Zane. And it's going to be a fun, basically, family get-together. Zane arrives, and Zane is played by quite, and this is putting it, understatingly, quite the famous actor. He's played by Canadian actor Hayden Christensen, which, for those of you who don't know, that's the guy who plays Anakin Skywalker. That's right. He plays Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars, and here he's a kid actor in Night of the Living Dummy 3. That's also adding to the iconicness that he signed up for this role. Whoo boy, and the quality shows. So he shows up, and Hayden Christensen does a great job at playing Zane. He plays that very awkward, socially awkward, kind of nerdy, geeky kid in quite the good way, and it kind of shows how much of a scaredy cat, how nervous he is all the time. Even though it's goofy, it's kind of meant to be. It is Goosebumps, right? And as they arrive, he's very sort of hesitant, kind of standoffish. And eventually they get along, they start hanging out, they start doing some things. He talks about his habit of photography and how he's into that, and they kind of catch up a little bit. And then on the first night that they're sleeping in, he has a prank pulled on him, where basically he wakes up and this dummy covered in this Jason Voorhees mask basically scares the life out of him. And right away it's blamed upon the kids. Dan and Trina, they're blamed by the parents for scaring the poor kid and, breaking the vow that they made. And they kind of basically attest, no, I didn't do it. No, we're innocent. No, we're not responsible. And you might be wondering to yourself, well, who's responsible? Who's truly responsible? Well, what's the name of the episode? I think you can guess, because one of the things that I specifically left out, because I want to talk about it now, is that amongst that attic full of dummies, the dad had picked up a brand new ventriloquist dummy. And this one he found at a shop. The shop owner was practically begging to give it away for whatever reason. And when he opens up the case, it is in fact Slappy. Yes, and it's Slappy with the broken piece of his face off, which means that this continuity matches up with the Night of the Living Dummy 2 episode, because in the Night of the Living Dummy 2 episode, he basically broke part of his face. So that kind of attests to that, kind of builds some continuity. Maybe it's all within the same world. Just a little nod, not meant to be delved too deep into it. Still an anthology episode format, but that's just a little bit of fun trivia for you. And they basically talk about how Slappy looks so realistic, whether the dad can fix him or not. And of course, his card is written out. The card that reads out brings him to life. It's read out by the kids, specifically Trina. And what ends up happening is that these pranks involved with Zane keep on happening, and keep on happening. And you have to decide who's really responsible. Is it the kids? Could it potentially be another factor going on? Could it potentially be Slappy? You don't really know. And as the story progresses, at one point, the kids have this moment after a fake out that causes them to have a bonding experience, kind of get closer together. And this is setting up for part 2, since this episode is a 2-parter. And the parents leave, and basically when the kids are left alone, a certain living dummy starts causing some problems. And there may not just be one involved. Maybe the whole squad is coming together to cause some havoc. And that is basically what the Night of the Living Dummy 3 episode is about. Many of you have probably watched it. There may be a few people who've read the book and not watched the episode, vice versa. So that's just a little recap. But overall, this episode is fantastic. I think it's great. I love the way that the dynamic between the characters is a lot better than it was in the book. Here it feels a lot more natural. It feels like something you can imagine involving with kids, where basically Zane is super scared. He has a habit, and it's sort of fed by Hayden Christensen's performance, kind of doing a good job with how scared Zane is, how nervous he is. And even after the fake out, when they group together and kind of become friends, you kind of feel that it naturally feels like they came together and became friends. They kind of get along with each other. And you can kind of see that, these kids misunderstand each other. But by that instance, they start, maybe realizing, we can get along, we can be friends. We don't have to be at odds with each other just because we're so different, which is a good moral message. And this happens a lot earlier in the episode than it does in the book, because in the book, it very much kind of drags out and harps on the fact that these kids are at odds against each other, how they're, Dan and Trina are kind of like these little shits. But in this case, they're not being little shits, but they're being accused as little shits. And then Zane ends up being a little shit, according to something. But in the episode, it is there present in the beginning, but it's kind of more realistic, kind of makes you understand it more. You kind of get an idea of how Zane is, how the kids are. And it sort of portrays from the beginning that, these kids are a little bit better. At least in the episode, they feel like the kids are a little bit better than what they were in the book. Where in the book, they feel kind of more like animal, like they feel more like they have more animosity towards each other, and just kind of paints them in a more negative manner. And the dialogue in the episode is a lot less cringy than in the book, so that's props there. And because it happens a lot earlier in the episode, actually the first half of the episode is setting up that stuff, and after the first half, in the second part, that's where the kids actually get along, and then they start experiencing all the crazy stuff. There's a lot more action in this episode. Slappy has a lot more stuff that he's doing. He has a lot more charm. He actually poses a threat to the kids, as opposed to in the book, where it's very much kind of left to be, it's Slappy doing it, but it's meant to be more ambiguous. The pranks are sort of dragged on, not as, basically threatening to the kids, more so just kind of ruining their reputations until the end of the climax, where that's the first confrontation between, the dummies and the kids. Here, Slappy's terrorizing them from the beginning of the part 2, so he's creeping them out, he's attacking them, he's giving off nice quippy jokes, throwing in his humor, kind of acting like a real boss, a real threat, and he's actually shown to be organizing, the other dummies, right? Rocky plays a role as his bodyguard, and he commands Rocky. He has this sort of like mafia boss energy, and of course, Rocky's dressed up like a mafia member, so kind of acting as his bodyguard. That works together. It just has a lot more charm. It has more action. They also took a creative direction in the episode where it's not always Slappy as a puppet. It's also parts where it's a kid or a small person dressed up as a dummy and then running around and moving around. So even though that could kind of look a little bit awkward, I actually enjoy it because I think that it actually adds to the kind of charisma and more so creepy movement of Slappy. The fact that he's moving around like a kid, and it actually allows for more action to happen and more kind of threat levels to be brought to the kids, as opposed to, if they're walking a dummy clumsily, it's not going to look as impressive. You have to do a lot more jump cuts. Here, including in the little person or kid dressed up as, a dummy, it actually can help out with the movement and bring some more character to Slappy. Even if they cut in between, I think it still works out. And on top of that, the climax is a lot better. You actually have a new aspect of a spell brought into the climax where, potentially some people that are living can be turned into wooden dummies and stuff like that. You've seen it in the new TV show. It originated from somewhere, right? So you have that. You also have, Slappy. I think he's way more, as I brought up, he's way more charismatic in the episode. You have that scene where they try to throw him down the well, and when he comes back out, he shows up in front of somebody's bed and then spits out a frog and goes, "Oh, had a frog," and stuff like that. Very quippy, very funny in the moment. And the ending is quite a bit better. It has much, first of all, it has more screen time with the multiple living dummies aspect as opposed to the book where it's only for half a page. And even the other, potentially living dummy is not really confirmed to being, actually living until the end. And here, Rocky has a more prominent role, and Rocky and Slappy in the climax have a much better role in terms of actual conflict, a moral message that's brought from the kids to the dummies, and that ending, man, that face-off, that clash between a certain two characters, and then the ending where a certain person is thrown onto the roof, and there may or may not be a scene involving a lightning bolt and huge finale to them. I thought it was great. Again, a lot more intense, a lot more flashy, no pun intended, and a lot more just overall, I guess, pizzazz, a lot more spunk impact to the episode, as opposed to the book, which felt like just this very carbon copy, hollow, formulaic, just weak book overall. This is much more memorable, much more iconic. And dare I say, I think when people say Night of the Living Dummy 3 is one of the best Goosebumps books, I think that they probably haven't read it for a majority of them. I think they probably haven't read it in a long time, and they actually mistake the episode as being a faithful adaptation to the book. And you can kind of see that because sometimes people will bring up certain aspects of the episode as part of the book when that's not the case, and then certain parts of the book as the episode, which is not the case. Quite different stories, even though the basic elements are the same. So yeah, this episode from me, I'm probably going to give it, 9.5 out of 10. Great episode. It's going to get a 9.5 out of 10, which is an A+. I think everybody should check out the Night of the Living Dummy 3 episode. Fantastic adaptation. Really good. Really fun. And I think this is probably one of the best Slappy / Night of the Living Dummy stories out there. So I would suggest all of you go check it out. Even if you're not a fan of the Goosebumps TV show, just check it out. Maybe you'll enjoy this episode. Maybe you'll like it. If you're a Slappy fan, you've probably definitely watched this already. But if you haven't, do not hesitate. Click off this video. Well, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit notifications, check out my other stuff, and like those videos as well. And then go watch the Night of the Living Dummy 3 episode. So, yeah, 9.5 out of 10, A+, fantastic, and shout out to the TV show. You guys took great creative liberties and improved on the story a lot more. So, yeah, I love this one, and I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button down below. Lets me know you guys are engaged with the content and you like what I'm putting out. So that's a free way to support me, and it lets me know that you guys enjoy it. And then also check out my other videos. I have related content involving the TV show, involving Goosebumps books. I also have horror movies, adult horror stories, and I have Goosebumps knockoffs as well. So I have a whole bunch of content on my stuff. Check it out if it's your first time. And if it's not your first time on this channel, I love you. Thank you for supporting, and thank you for always coming back to deal with my bullshit. That's all I have for today. Hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, deuces. Yo, man, I promise you, bro, Night of the Living Dummy 3, I don't know what y'all read in that book. Listen, man, I think, secretly, all right, between you and me, there's probably some unreleased Night of the Living Dummy 3 book, TV book out there. And I think it may be circulating into people's, I guess, sort of houses. Maybe there's some copies of Night of the Living Dummy 3 where it has the Jacobus cover, Jacobus back, and the external stuff, but the story inside is actually that Night of the Living Dummy 3 TV episode just stapled in there. And you know who I think is responsible for this shit? I think it's my ex Felicia, man, because I swear to God, bro, she was always hating on me. She was always saying that no one's going to trust your reviews. No one's going to trust your opinions. They hated on, and I told her, man, I said, they hated on Jesus because he told the truth. And she's like, oh, you called yourself Jesus? I said, no, that's not what I said. I'm saying they hated on people because they told the truth. She's like, you ain't the truth, bitch. You lied about cheating on me. I said, you know what? That's a low blow. Might have been true, but that's still a low blow. And you know what? I think this is her revenge. I think her and her new guy Ezekiel. That's right. She dated that Ezekiel dealer who used to work at the circus. You know what I'm saying? I think they're working together and putting out this whole big scandal. So you know what? If any conspiracy theorists are out there, this is the new scandal you got to tackle, and we're going to get them arrested, all right? Now, if she happens to tell you about any situation about kilograms of cocaine that happens to be in my closet that I was selling along with her to get these Goosebumps books, I am not affiliated with that, and at no such point. And if the CIA is watching, you guys really need to get a life. And that's not true at all. I would never do such a thing.